All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheo, Mr. Ojo. I work as a centre manager for an alternative provision in Barking and Dagenham. So it's sports and education based. And I used to work in a school in North London or North East London, working as a teacher, a mentor, and a head of year.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Miss Bowling, Nadine Bowling. I also worked alongside Mr. Ojo Sheo in a North London school. I've got over 20 years plus experience working in secondary schools, working mainly as a mentor. I've also worked as a head of year, and my most recent post was head of parent and student engagement.
Okay, thank you. Rose?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rose Lewis. I work in Black women and domestic violence. I work with Sister Space, a specialist charity working with African heritage women and girls. Obviously, you all are talking more about education, but the women that we work with who have children, there are, and we come across numerous issues regarding mental health, particularly with the children also.
Brilliant. Thank you. It's not so much in education or stuff. It's like talking so our parents could hear, you know, this is how you need to support your children. You know, Rose, and the beautiful thing about, although you're not in education, you're with the parents, which is fantastic. So, you know, the parents need to, you know, we need to do the transition. So the parents have to actually get the message as, you know, in terms of, yes, this is how you need to help your children because they need your help. It's no longer for the school to deal with. Parents, your children need you. Okay. Well, one of the things I've actually been thinking about is how do we feel that parents could help their children in relationship to the mental health and transitioning back into the education system, transitioning back to life, basically, because they've had this pandemic, children were restricted, they were at home with the parents, etc. How do we feel that parents could help? And how, I'm asking 2-3 questions. And in terms of the education system, what can the education do in terms of supporting the parents, supporting the children, supporting the teachers? I'll bring that out.
I'll start with the parents. In terms of the parents, I found during the time of the COVID, one of the issues that I found for the parents was they needed the link to school still. So the children had the link to school because they had online lessons, you know, and they would maybe speak to a teacher every so often. But for parents, you know, when you go to secondary school, there is a gap for parents and school anyway. They no longer are able to come into the playground. They're no longer able to see the form tutor in the morning. They're no longer able to have that quick little chat. Oh, you know, Johnny had a bad weekend. You know, they're no longer able to do that anymore. So when the COVID situation happened, it really impacted a lot on parents as well because one, they're not normally able to come into the playground, but they were now no longer able to have any kind of contact with the school. And during that time, I was doing a weekly session, which was just like a coffee morning session, really. But it really showed just how much the parents needed that link, just an area to be able to say, look, this is what I'm finding difficult at home. You know, they're not motivated to do their lesson. They're not, you know, able. I think we were having a little discussion earlier where, you know, parents were not used to their children being around. They're not used to having to actually teach their children something or oversee their teaching. And they found that difficult. They weren't used to having this relationship with their child for so many hours of the day. And they found that difficult. So I think for parents, they also need a forum of space where they can be able to speak and ask for help without feeling judged, without feeling like they're failures. You know, none of us have all the answers, but some of us are parents and we can share. I think they really appreciated that. And hearing from other parents in a non-judgmental space. I'll let Shayla talk about the kids, but I thought I'd just put that in about the children, the parents.
For me,
Fantastic. That's
I
brilliant.
do think that, and this is not being judgmental, but I think it's for the parents and we as parents and other parents to get to know themselves first and actually see who they are. And then you can actually have a space in your mind to get to know your child. Because as we were saying, we were speaking previously, that the young people that I was working with realized I don't like my family, I don't know them. You're getting to spend so much time with people that supposedly you're close to, but then you realize that that relationship or the bond you have is only based on a certain routine. It's not actually, there isn't a natural bond between them. So I think for parents, and I know it's thinking back now, it's almost like an extended summer holiday, and that was went on for a bit of a year and a half, and it's like, whoa, you've never spent that time with your child. But if you can get to know the reasons why you had the child, the reasons why you brought this young person into the world, and for some it may be difficult, for some it may be very easy. I do know some parents that took the opportunity to embrace it and have sort of their schooling and pooled with other parents, and they each took a day each to look after the young people and do a schooling or aspect for them. So I thought that was really good, and that's the idea I have in my head. But I really think it's about getting to know yourself as a person, as a parent, and then you're able to relate to your young child more and maybe guide them more, because some of the parents, as much as they're parents, they're still young people inside, or they may have been through certain traumas or whatever not, and haven't necessarily dealt with that in a holistic way to help them heal. And then they're now having to perpetuate in some respects or not be able to relate because they haven't got those skills to be able to relate to their young people.
That's very, very true. That's very, very true.
I think with
Rose,
the parents, what you're saying, Shay, about knowing themselves, I think that, you know, it's really true, because I found that during those times of having those forum spaces, you know, either they'd forgotten some of the things that they'd maybe implemented years ago when their child was little. And I think because when they go to secondary school, you know, like I said, they kind of drop them off and that's it. They forget they're still their children, that they're still children, you know? So they do still need them. I think they forget that they are still needed, and then the gap grows. And like you said, they were doing organised between themselves to have, like, look after each other as children. But I think within the forum that we put on, they were also asking for help. They were asking for help and asking for, you know, not just support, but suggestions, you know, what could I do better, which was really nice to see. But it was those parents, I think what you said was quite important, is those parents that were getting back to knowing themselves again. They were the ones that were taking the advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, that is very, very true, because those parents who just couldn't be bothered or didn't know how, you know, the situation still continued. They just left the children to get on with it, and they never tap in that, okay, that child might need some help. You see, that's the whole thing, because you still have some parents that didn't even know themselves and still don't know themselves now, you know, because for them that was too much of an effort to having to support that young person, because A, they didn't know how to do it or what to do. And B, even though you told them, I think they have this mindset of that's the job of the teacher. So therefore there was no transition. They were not able to transition into, yes, that was the job of the teacher. Teacher, now it's your turn to support that child. And that was a lot of things I find that, you know, especially teaching on the online space, that was a lot of stuff there. It was heavy. You know, Rose, thank you very much for that. Rose.
Yeah, in terms of mental health and domestic abuse, this is an area, particularly with Black women, with African heritage people, that is an area that we're all too familiar with, but an area that we do not talk about enough, that we do not gather together about enough. But it's interesting because there are a lot of organizations, a lot of charities, a lot of individuals, a lot of people doing things in and around mental health. And again, this is one of the things that we don't promote it enough. So it's not that things are not being done in our community, it's that there's just not a promotion of it enough. In terms of Black women going through domestic abuse and mental health, the statistics are very, very high, but in the scheme of things, we are ignored as it is with everything. When you see adverts, when you see things in the media on mental health, yeah, you're now beginning to see maybe 1 and 2 images of Black people, but overall, you don't see it. So a lot of people in our community don't think that we actually go through it, when the reality is that we do. You go into any of the mental health systems where there's a large percentage of us, the mental health units are full up of Black people, and it's male and female, although we know that the high statistics are Black men, but nevertheless there is a huge percentage of women that go through it. I'm now going to talk about domestic abuse briefly. Every area of mental health, Black women who are going through domestic abuse go through it. A lot of them don't even think that they're going through it, because that's how it's always been. It's always been that they may have, they may be depressed and they don't even know that they're depressed. That gets passed on to the children, because there are a lot of children who themselves are also carers, and their mental health and their mental welfare are not being catered for. The abuse that the women go through and the extent of what is going on, again, we don't talk about it, because in our community, don't talk my business in public, don't wash your dirty laundry in public. If you talk about it, the first thing that your GP is going to tell you is about either taking medication or going to a mental health unit. The women are already going through things, and then there's the prospect that your child, that social services, and we know our relationship with social services, we know our relationship with the legal system, the injustice system as we call it, and we also know our relationship with the police. So if you're having mental health issues, particularly if you're having high level mental health issues, police is going to come, and we know how often that turns out. And we at Sister Space, we work with the women on their level, looking at what they say that their needs are, and then trying to find an African-centered approach to helping the women to deal with the mental health issues. So there's a lot, and I haven't touched on most of it. But in terms of us as a community, if you're a friend, if you're a neighbor, or if you're someone, we do need to have more conversations and more interactions in helping the neighbor, the friend, the son, the daughter, or whomever it is, to learn how to help someone who they think are going through mental health crisis.
Can I just piggyback on the back of that, just in terms of for the young people? Just as Rose was saying, that can't hear you, Debbie. Were you talking? You're on mute. Oh, there
Yes, I
you
was saying, I just realized, sorry. I was saying fantastic because I also wanted you to come in on that in terms of increase of domestic abuse within the family during that time. And the children were coming back to the school with those packages. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just as you're saying, the impact, because obviously, as Rose was saying, that the parents or the mothers are going through this thing, that it's then passed on to the young people, whether they're actually seeing this. Hello, beautiful lady. Whether they see this in person or they're aware, they hear of certain things that's going on, that has an impact on them, especially when they're coming to school. In terms of what schools can do is maybe that just someone like myself and the dean who can relate to the young people, give them space to actually be heard, and then be able to refer them to the most appropriate place so they get the help that they want. Not all schools have that. And unfortunately, some places where I've worked at, I'm aware that those avenues or those spaces for the young people, they're not there anymore. So then going to schools, they need more people who can relate to the young people. Doesn't necessarily be the same color, but who understand the young people, maybe have walked that life before, and then can actually relate, help the young people to be the best that they can be. And that really is it. I think where we've been successful in working with the young people as we have is we understand them. We were all children one time. I definitely remember being a young child. And on the flip side of it, I have experienced the domestic violence as a young person. I've also experienced my mum suffering from mental illness. And only as a big young man now, I'm understanding slightly the impacts that's had on me. But maybe it's my personality, I'm resilient. And it's for me to help the young people to be able to be resilient, but also understand and engage in the feelings of what has been going on with them.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Nadine, you want to come in?
Yeah, so, you know, it is a shame in terms of what the schools, sometimes what the schools are providing, because I remember many years ago when I think it was probably, gosh, about 1998, it was many years ago, when there was the initiative Excellence in Cities. It was an excellent initiative that the government came up with at the time, and that was the introduction of mentors into schools. They put a lot of money into it. A lot of schools had maybe 3 or 4 people in a team, and you know, it was something that was really new, and it was what the children needed. It filtered out because I think, one, as always, when there's a good thing, the money somehow always disappears for some reason or other. And you know, they replace it with different initiatives, and they, you know, as schools are always on budgets, they try and double people up and things like that. But when it comes to mental health of children, I think we sometimes forget that that is part of the education of our children, is teach them how to manage their own feelings, teach them how to manage being in relationships with other people, how to manage themselves in different environments. And I think, you know, it's not just about English, maths and science, it's about teaching them to be able to manage themselves. They do spend a lot of time at school, and, you know, I think it's a really important part. You know, we might call it life skills or, you know, what have you, but it is important. And I think just, you know, for me, when people say about, oh, working with a young person, oh, now you're distracting me, Shay.
I know.
When you're working with a young
Hello.
person, you know, sometimes people would say to us, you know, oh, how do you manage to get so-and-so to listen, or what have you? Because we listened. And I think that was the sort of long and short of it. You know, for every human interaction, for most people, whether we're feeling sad or even when we're happy, you know, we're angry or whatever the emotion is, what we a lot of the time need is just someone to listen, not to speak, just to listen. And, you know, you don't always have the answers, and sometimes it's not someone looking for an answer, they just just want someone to listen. And that's talking about the children, but it also happened with the teachers as well. You know, we had, you know, there was a few teachers that really struggled when the children came back from COVID, because the children, some of them came back very different. For whatever reason, maybe there was some domestic violence at home, because, as you know, being in the, you know, that environment 24/7 with the family that you've not spent so much time with, seeing things that you may not have noticed before, you know, children came back with a lot of different experiences that some of us couldn't even imagine. And some of them came back resilient, some of them came back because of whatever it is in their DNA, they're able to deal with that and compartmentalize it or whatever. And others weren't able to do that. And, you know, teachers are humans too. They had their own issues that they went through being in that environment and, you know, going through COVID as well. So when they came back, we had a lot of teachers under stress. We had a lot of teachers that were finding it difficult. And we weren't just mentoring students, we were actually having to mentor some teachers a lot of the time, and actually mediate and, you know, kind of do a lot of kind of restorative work between children and teachers, and trying to get that balance kind of aligned again. So, you know, listening was the biggest thing at that time for both the teachers and the children, I feel.
And when we talk, thank you very much for that. And when we look at it now, do you feel that people have forgotten that there's still a remnant of students suffering from mental health challenges, that they feel that when it was new, they dealt with it and they feel that's done? You know, do we feel that?
I think there's a lot of that. I think everybody, particularly in the education environment, everybody just wanted everything to go back to normal. But there was a new normal, and I think that's what people forgot, was that there's so many experiences. It was something that had never happened within schools before, and everybody got back to school, and I think what they were just thinking was, right, everything back to normal. But there was not a normal anymore, and I think that's what got lost in the bringing teachers back into school, bringing children back into school. Everybody wanted everybody just to get back to normal. Oh, we'll have a few catch-up sessions, whatever, but there was not a normal anymore. It was, you know, it was a changed environment, and it still is a changed environment. And I do think that, I don't know if they've forgotten it, but they tried to forget it, and they have tried to put it to one side because they want to get on with this, what they consider normal.
And I think also just adding to that is it's almost gone back to kind of business as usual. I think working within the education sector and definitely in secondary schools, have seen that there's a group of young children, I think within that 2020, that were in the years 4, 5 and 6, have had a real social education. There's a big chunk of that has been missing, and coming into the schools, they don't know how to socialize. I think the emotional stages or regulations they would have gone through with their friends, teachers within primary school, they missed out on that. And that's very visible when they've come in now to the year 7, 8s and 9s in secondary schools, that they don't know how to, not all of them, but a lot of them, vast majority, you see there's that social interaction that has been missing. I haven't seen that schools have dealt with that in a conscious way. There's very small groups of people, which I know, and there's a lady here, myself, that understand that and can see that, but as a whole entity, I don't think schools or the education sector are actually catering for that. And that's going to have a bit of an issue down the line as well, unless more emphasis, not necessarily money, but more emphasis is being done to put on actually focusing on these young people. What are their mental health needs? What do we do in school to be able to make sure they have an environment that is conducive to them to learn emotionally and educationally? But then also, as Nadina touched on, staff as well, teachers. What are we doing for them? And unfortunately, I think before the pandemic, there was a lot of things being done, and after and during, that kind of went out the window. But that's my experience and what I've seen kind of across the board.
Yeah, I really do agree with you there because, as I say, I teach on a agency basis, and in all the schools I've been to a lot of schools, they seem to have forgotten that we've actually had a pandemic. As you say, they just see it as life back to normal, but there would be no normality because some of the behavior we've seen in the classroom is a direct result of what the children went through. It's not a normal behavior pattern. Is they're behaving because they're crying for help. They don't know how to say that I'm hurting and I don't know what to do. I'm lost. Even now, I was speaking to one of my friends yesterday, and even right now, when she goes to schools, the children are saying, well, they want me to perform, but they don't know what's going on in my life. Because the schools are so concerned of results, they're forgetting that in order to get this result, you need to get it from the children who you need to fix. And these children are broken. And I really do see what you're saying. The question is, what can school and what should school and what can parents and what should parents do?
Nadine, I'm sure you can touch on this a lot better than I am. Just my thoughts that come to my head is that, as Nadine said, she had the parent forums, had that relationship, a connection with the schools. Most schools call themselves community schools, actually work with the community that you're in and actually have the parents come into the schools. As Nadine said, more and more now when they come to secondary school, the parents are held far away unless your child is in trouble or you've got a parents' evening. There's no real engagement. So actually start engaging with the parents, get them on board. Nadine, you'll be able to touch a lot better because you were that person that created that.
Shayo's very, very, unfortunately, a lot of schools are scared to have parents in. And we have the odd parent here and there that might be the parent that people will maybe say they're troublemakers, whatever, but they're not. They're concerned parents. They are expressing themselves. We all express ourselves in different ways, and I think the problem with secondary schools is they're scared to have parents in. I had to fight very hard, and I managed to put together a parent council. We had regular parent meetings. We had like maybe fortnightly, Shay, I think, probably fortnightly coffee mornings. And the parents were so appreciative of having that area. One, as I said, to be able to voice their concerns, but also to share concerns and ask for help because of, I think it is providing that space. And I think schools should have the parents coming in, because just because they're someone's parent doesn't mean that they can't share experience. It doesn't mean that they can't add value to the education of all the children that are being educated within that establishment. And I think we're scared because I think sometimes, schools feel like, oh, this is our job, we're educating, you're the parent, stay out there. But when we talk about, and Shayo said about community schools, a lot of schools nowadays are not what I would consider community schools. I remember when I was at school, I remember one of the first schools that I worked in, that was a community school. We had community events. You knew the people in your community. The school made efforts. At that time, I think they had, parent support workers or whatever, but the parent support workers actually were allowed to go and visit homes, have parents coming in, offering support through the different services. And because you built up that relationship with the parent, they weren't so scared of having certain agencies being involved, because they knew that you were doing it for their best interest and they could see the results of that. Because we don't have that kind of relationship where, people, there's a lot of political correctness and all those sorts of things. People worried about people going to people's homes and, and things like that. We lose the human interaction. We lose that human connection, and I think that's a shame, because that's where we are as a community. If we work as a community, we can support one another. The parents feel supported, the children feel supported, the school will feel supported. But it's kind of done in namesake, but not actually done in action.
I tend to agree with that wholeheartedly, where, you know, they talk about it and they don't do it. Because I went to one school, I taught in for a little while, and one of the questions I did ask them was, what have they got in place for the mental health of, to support the mental health of the teachers and the students? And the principal said to me, oh, we're working on something. And I said, well, you can't be working on something. Something is needed now, because we are aware that the children went through and the teachers went through a very unusual situation. So right now there should be something in place. And sadly, in a lot of schools, there is nothing in place per se. Let's just carry on with the academic. And while the increase in mental health of these young people continue to increase, to move up. So in terms of how do we think that we could help to reduce and increase awareness of?
I think it's you know, with that one, I mean, all the different, it depends on people. It depends on people. I mean, as I said earlier, you know, I was fortunate to work with Shayo, who was a strong head of year. I was head of parent and student engagement. Shayo was the head of year, and he was somebody I could work very closely with and really understood and you know, knew the needs of the children as well as the parents. As well as the teachers teaching his year group. So we were able to really work in tangent with each other and be able to address all of that. So even with parents and the teachers, when there was a conflict, we were able to work with that as well. And, you know, talking, listening, working together. But it does depend on the people that you have. It does depend on the people that you have.
Nadine has given us all the answers that you're asking, all the answers the questions you're asking. Nadine's given us all the answers, and it's quite simple, really. The solution is really quite simple. That we as African people, we as Black people, we have to create what is needed for helping people going through mental health issues, be it in the school, be it in the domestic abuse world where I work in. You are a supply teacher going around, you see where those needs are, and you've created this platform. So the solution is you have to set it up and make those links, and hopefully other people will then see that they can do it. A lot of the times we feel that if we have a small platform like this, that it's not going to work. It's not going to be conducive, because people like to see maybe 10, 15, 20 people on a Zoom link, on a Zoom, to make it beneficial. But right here, right now, we so much solutions have been put forward on what we have to do. But when we do what we have to do, we can't just do it the same way that everybody else does it. There has to be a little uniqueness, a little speciality in it for when you do it, because obviously it has to be based upon the needs of the people that you're catering for. But we also, and I know all of us here will do that, is to ensure that our cultural heritage is first and foremost a part of what we're doing. You can't keep doing it the same way as everybody else, because 9 times out of 10, that is not going to work. And so we've got to look forward and beyond. And sometimes it's all well and good us doing things, but if we do not talk to the people that we are going to cater for, we're just going to do what we think that is needed, what we think should be done, and what we think is going to get us brownie points or whatever it is. We see that all too often. So with Nadine, you know, getting the parents and talking to the parents and having the, you know, the coffee mornings. At Sister Space, we have what we call mango morning, yeah? And when we have all these things, we have all our traditional foods, our traditional drinks. You'll have your sorrel, you know, you'll have your jollof, if it has to be jollof, if you have your little, you know, you create your own thing, and you go with it despite what anybody else thinks. That's first and foremost. For women that was going through domestic abuse and their mental health, like I said, a lot of them don't actually know that they're going through mental health issues, because some of them have been just brought up being depressed, or their mother was depressed, their father was depressed. And so they just are just living life, and being depressed is not put into a mental health capacity. We have to also break down all the different aspects of what mental health is. So most people may know schizophrenia. People might think it's you shouting all over the place and things like that. But we have to sit down and break down all the categories of what mental health is, and then speak to the people about it, but also be mindful about what you're speaking about and how you're speaking about some of those things. Because if you have your one mind view and your stereotypes and everything else, you're going to lose people. You're going to in fact cause further distress. In terms of women and the pandemic and the lockdown, that caused a lot of problems, not just generally, but also during that period. There was the thing that went out that was saying that Black people are more likely to get COVID, and you know, all these kind of things. But so there was a lot of that, I call it that scaremongering, because really the statistics and everything, and I don't know who these people were that got all these statistics, and who did they speak to, who, you know, all that kind of stuff. So you had all that kind of thing, and then there were, but yet there were no provisions put forward to talking to the very people that it impacted and affected. And you had a lot of things happening where we, as for Black people, there were no things put forward. So there were when they were saying, oh, we got this here for people to come and get, we got that there for people, you can come and buy this, you can come and buy that, we can give you this food, we can give you that food. They didn't even give you the food that you wanted. They just gave you the very basic foods and things like that. And so people who are going through mental health issues and crisis were not actually being helped. It actually made things a lot worse than it is. And even up to now, we're still dealing with the backlog and the backlash of all those issues.
Very true. Very, very true. Thank you for that. Just to round up, can we have at least 2 tips that parents can do to support their children and themselves? What would we say to parents in terms of supporting their young people and supporting themselves? Because I do feel that still although the pandemic have finished, we're still in this very vulnerable stage with the young people, because I still find a lot of them are still suffering quite high with mental health issue and confusion.
I'd say 2 tips. 2 tips. The first one would be to just create forums. First and foremost, get people to talk. You talk, because you have the capacity, not just the capacity, but you have all those links, and you've got all the people that you've worked with etc. And you just have to keep talking. You talk to everybody, even the people that you know are not going to talk. And you can, you know, you can just send emails and so on. You could talk to, as you say, you know, the head teachers and everybody else. But most importantly, like Nadine, like we do at Sister Space, create things and get the parents themselves to be a part of what you're creating. And those are the 2 tips that I've got.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
I agree with Rose. It is about creating those safe space, those areas where they can feel safe. Something that Rose said was really important is it doesn't matter how many people turn up. It really doesn't. It really doesn't matter. You can set a forum and have 1 or 2 parents turn up. And I used to do that sometimes. And at first I'd get a bit discouraged, like, oh, what am I doing? I'm not thinking. But those parents that do turn up are the ones that are asking for support. So you mustn't discount them. You mustn't discount them because they're there. They're there asking the support. And even the parents that haven't turned up doesn't mean that they don't want the support. They're just not ready. They're just not ready. So if you've got the forum, you've got the space, at some point or another, they will reach out. But it's about giving space for them to be able to do that. And it is also, like, you know, again, what Rose said was about letting the parents feel that this is theirs. Yeah, it's not just me as a sort of ambassador of the school or whatever, you know, sort of saying, oh, this is what we think, this is what we think. It's creating that space for us to know what they think, because once we know what the parents think, we can then help the children. We can help the children to help their parents. You can build back those bridges between the parents. You can offer that support, and in the long term, you know, you've got that's going to help the education of that child in themselves as people as well as academia.
Yes, thank you very much. OJ, is he back?
Yeah, absolutely, Nadine. 100%. Like I said, you will have already done that and put all that forward, and it works. And we've got to believe that it works. And just as you said, so at Sister Space, we create Zooms on all different aspects of domestic abuse, but some of them can only be very small groups because there's so much. You've got to be mindful and aware about confidentiality. You've got to be mindful and aware of issues that women are going through. So you create small things, and some of them find it very comforting, and it does help, and you do get to go through a lot. And then you create your bigger ones. You can create your bigger ones, and those bigger ones, you will get a lot more from it. And then again, you will create smaller groups, and you can see who really is who. And oftentimes, the ones that sometimes talk a lot, they just talk and talk and talk, and you're thinking, oh, Lord God, and they talk a lot. But it also tells you a lot, and yes, then you can you can tailor whom is whom and what is what, and they can also hear that there are other people who are going through the same thing, because sometimes the talkers are the ones that help us, those of us who are the practitioners. The talkers are the one that can help us to get to the other ones also, you know. And the silent ones will often listen hard, but then afterwards they will come and they'll say to you, you know what, this person said that, I might think about that. So just, my sister Debbie, keep doing what you're doing, you know, just keep putting your thing forward, put it out there, have your peeps, and, you know, but Nadine, hug, 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 hug.
Yeah. Thank you. I so agree with that, because one of the things is talking and listening. And that's one of the things I'm trying to promote in most of the schools I go to, because we do need to create safe space. And as Rose, as you say, sometimes we have the bigger group that we find nobody's talking in the bigger group because they don't want to come across as, you know, all sorts that, oh, they shouldn't be here and all of that. But the more we create the small groups and allow them to feel comfortable and talking, then we could actually transition into bigger groups, because not everybody feels comfortable in speaking in big groups because of how it makes them feel. That, you know, they don't feel they're good enough, they don't feel they should be here, they don't feel that that's the right place for them, and the negative goes on. So in terms of the small groups, it's so very true, you know, so that they could feel comfortable enough to talk. I totally agree with what both of you say, and it is very true. And that's something I feel that we need to start promoting in schools, because I feel that it's forgotten that we need to keep on having those dialogues. It is so very important, because these children we want to have this academic result from, they are crumbling because they're not able to navigate this emotion they've got. And that's something the schools are forgetting, because one of the schools I've just left in December, that's something I had to say to them, because one of the criticism against me in a lot of the schools is I'm taking too long to actually get you to the academic. And I have to remind them that these children are broken. So before I could actually get to the academic, I need to sort out the mental health issues, because they just want to talk. You know, that's one of the reasons why it's important when teachers go into the classroom, they need to tap into, how are you today? You know, what's happening? Because we are failing to realize that when we don't do that, that's when we have the class constantly chatting, because they have so many things they want to talk about, and they want to give them the space of the opportunity to do that. Because some of them not even able to do that at home because of the relationship they still have with the parents. So it is so important that we constantly, you know, like, encourage the school to give these children this space, because they need it.
It's having that to relate to the young people. As you said, we've come through a certain period, actually have that relationship with the young people, and that's where you get more out of them. We used to run, myself and the dean run a what was called an impact zone on Saturdays. It was a voluntary academic and kind of holistic environment where the children will come at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, volunteer. We used to get 70 to 80 young people on a Saturday morning, but they'll do their English, maths and science through the year. They'll do some self-defense with myself. They'll do cooking. We'd have a leadership program for the first session. They'll do music, I think sport as well, but it was also geared towards their improving themselves and building up themselves during the kind of working week in school. So if you were late, your target was to sort out your lateness. If you're getting a lot of behavior issues, the target was to improve your behavior, whatever it may be. And they knew that there were reward trips. And if you didn't come to, I think if you didn't get there by 8 o'clock, it was 8:30, wherever it is, the doors closed. Next week, you see them running down the road in the early morning on Saturday, because they want to be there. The environment is there, that is nurturing. There's people that are willing to talk to you, willing to listen to you, have been there where you have been. And sometimes we haven't been there, so we can just learn ourselves as well. But I think where we did a kind of good sharing of practice, where we went to different schools in Hackney and other boroughs, they started to take that concept on board, that, you know, we need another environment where the young people can just be themselves, but also learn and engage without having the necessary, this is school, there's all this structure. Let them be themselves and let them be a bit free. There's rules, but within society there's rules, but you can be yourself. So if schools, and I suppose that is our remit to push that out there for them, that you need safe spaces, impact zones, environmental places where the young people can be themselves without the stigma or thing of, this is school, this is my teacher. No, we're people, we're learning together. So.
And I think, to add to that, one of the things that we did within that was there was the rules and regulations, but they knew and understood what those rules and regulations were about, why. And it was because we had high expectations of every single child that walked through that door. Every child, wherever they were, we had high expectations. And they knew that. They knew that. It wasn't like high expectations to get your A star. It was high expectations of you as a person, you know, what do you bring to to school as a person, your character? How can you add? They were the things, you know, when Shay is saying about the running down the road, you know, like to get to school, to get there, they'd have to be there at 8:30. They would run down the road because at 8:30, with 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I would lock that door. And they'd be like, oh, but miss, it's just, but I'd be, you know, my analogy to them was, if you were going on holiday and you had a plane to catch, you would be there way in advance because you want to catch that plane. I want you to catch the goodness of yourself. I can't say to you, oh, it's okay to be late, because then that means I've got low expectations of you. And that I can't do. I can't do it. So little things like that. And they soon come around. They soon come around because of, they know that there's people there, as Shaya said, that are caring, that are listening and have those expectations because they want the best for them. And they had that space. It was not something they had to come to. It was voluntary. And as Shaya said, every week we'd have numbers going up. Sometimes I'd be saying to Shaya, oh my gosh, Shay, like, how are we gonna accommodate all these children? You know, but we'd have like 70 to 80 kids without fail every week. And they were getting to school, getting to us sometimes earlier than when they would get to school. But that didn't mean that we allowed it through the week either, because we always linked it. We always linked it. So we'd be like, you're getting late at school, this is what we're going to be working on. You're not doing your homework? Okay, this is our focus for you. So they were getting that kind of individual attention. But it was the expectations. And when a child knows that you've got high expectations, wherever their talent lies, wherever they are, just as them to be as people, they will meet those expectations because they can see that you genuinely want that for them, and they'll meet it. But it is, again, the safe space. Rosa said it, Shay said it, it's safe spaces for the parents, for the children, and for teachers, because a lot of the time teachers struggle and they don't know who to talk to because they're thinking, oh, someone's going to say I'm a rubbish teacher, or oh, if I say that, it's going to get to SLT. But they need to have safe spaces as well. They need to have safe spaces as well, to be able to say, you know what, it's okay for me to say, look, I'm struggling with 9B. Has anybody got some ideas that I can implement? You know, can someone come and maybe, you know, just watch my class and not take it as a criticism, really see it as, this person's coming to support me because they want me to be a better teacher, just like we want to support the children to be better people, and just like we want parents to feel like, not that they're better parents, because everybody's parenting is different for their child, but that they can feel confident in their parenting.
Thank you. I really agree with everything you're saying, Adele, because it's very, very true. Something that you touch on, which is really fantastic, is teachers also need safe space. And it's often forgotten that the teachers also need safe space. And it is so important that it is constantly reminded, because teachers are actually living the profession and they're breaking down. You know, I've seen in one of the same schools you guys have worked in where, you know, teachers have actually broken down because they couldn't cope. They couldn't really cope. And it was just something very small, but at the same time, that was having a bottleneck. You know, you keep on pushing things in and it just finally exploded, because it's forgotten that teachers also have needs. And it's important that we start pushing the reminder that teachers have needs and they do need safe space as well. Thank you very much for that. Is there anything else anyone wants to say before actually thank you? And then, is there anything else? Nadine, anything else you want to say? Rose, is there anything else you want to say?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to vent, basically.
It wasn't venting, it was imparting knowledge. And I must say it's fantastic because, you know, as we know, during the pandemic, because people were at home, there was an increase in domestic abuse, which people seem to have forgotten about that. Because people were at home not being used to each other. And as a result of that, there was an increase in abuse. And that's
well, the thing about it is when it comes to domestic abuse in the Black community, A lot of us are not used to talking, having people talking about it publicly. A lot of us are not used to people breaking it down about what the women, and the domestic abuse is not only against women. It can be against your mother, your brother, your uncle. It can be anyone. The perpetrators can be your mother. It can be your brother, your sibling. It can be your brother who is thinking domestic abuse to their mother and things like that. So it's across all boards. But the pandemic, as you all have quite rightly stated, has exposed and opened up a lot of areas that are very painful and still right now very, very raw. And you know, the only solution is for us to do something about it, is for us to talk about it, because communication is key, and for us to find ways to make things better for everyone. So, because it helps us as well, you know, us the practitioners, it helps us and it helps everybody else. So my thing is to everybody or anybody who hears this is keep talking, keep communicating, but fundamentally find ways to heal and to have a solution to what's happening. Talking about it all the time, writing about it, moaning about it, just keep saying, what can we do about it? You know, there's so much material out there. There's so much people who have done things out there that we can look on. We can do research, we can write papers, we can create films, and we can do so much. And I think that's the only way forward.
Thank you very much. Ode, you want, can you just say your last closing? Is he back? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
So I just put in a little lady to bed, so I'm going to just jump back in and put her to bed. But just as I was saying before, I think it's good that we have this forum, and thank you for inviting me as well, just to be able to give an aspect of myself to the people, and especially the young people, so they can actually hear our experiences and know that, not to say there is hope, but we all go for our own things, especially we're just big young children at the end of the day with a little bit more time on this earth than others. So again, if there's anyone out there that wants to help, needs the help, you just got to take that first step. This is the year to actually do that and not be afraid. Go out on a limb and just say, you know what, I want this done. Let me try, because you don't know until you try at the end of the day. I think that's my point for everyone else. Go out and get it and do it. All right, and we will do the same for you all as well.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Okay, thank you all very much for taking the opportunity and accepting the offer to come onto the platform. It's going to be an ongoing dialogue, because we need to talk. As you all identify, the more we communicate, the more we start finding solution for the problem or for the challenges. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic evening, night, morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. And can you guys drop your link in the chat, please, so that, or on the platform, so that people could actually, you know, follow you or see what you do, etc.